It's Howard Eber, and I am an alcoholic. I want to welcome everybody to week number 60 of the Big Book Comes Alive Step Study Workshop. Let me get Charlotte taken care of here. There we go. And we are finishing Two Employers. Uh, Hopefully, we'll get done with it in the first few minutes. We're on page 149, first paragraph. Um, we have been looking at this chapter a couple of different ways. One, as it was intended to direct employers for how to deal with their alcoholic employees, but also there's a lot of great material here for how to work with a prospect for guidance for sponsorship. It's not that different when an employer has to deal with a prospect who's working for them than a sponsor who has to work with a prospect who's just new to recovery. So there's a lot of good advice that works both ways in this chapter, and we've been trying to point them out, but we're about to wrap it up. We're on, like I said, page 149, paragraph 1. He mentions in the previous paragraph that there's a certain degree of a denial that a lot of employers have that we don't have an alcohol problem here. If you remember in the beginning of the chapter, he had an owner of a company who sought Hank out and spoke for 2 hours. Hank tried to tell him what alcoholism was about, and he still missed the point. He still thought if the guy could just get his self-will together and pull himself up by his bootstraps, he could clean up and he'd be fine. And most employers have had an attitude similar to that. So he's addressing the employer who thinks we don't really have a problem. And here he is. He says, perhaps this is a typical attitude. We who have collectively seen a great deal of business life, at least from the alcoholic angle, had a smile at this gentleman's sincere opinion. He might be shocked to know how much alcoholism is costing his organization a year. You may want to underline that sentence. You may be shocked to know how much alcoholism is costing his organization, because remember, one of the things that Hank is trying to put across all through the chapter is that you've made an investment in this guy. He's paid off. He's been an earner for you. Why would you just toss that out because he has an illness? Give him a chance. You've made an investment. Keep making the investment. He's worth it. And that's what he's trying to stress here. And how much alcoholism is costing your organization if you took a hard look at it. That company may harbor many actual or potential alcoholics. We believe that managers of large enterprises often have little idea how prevalent the problem is. Even if you feel your organization has no alcoholic problem, let's highlight the rest of this paragraph. It may pay to take another look down the line. You may make some interesting discoveries. Of course, this chapter refers to alcoholics, and you may want to add the real alcoholics. And whenever we come across that term in this book, what we like to do is put above the word alcoholic A/O. So we know what we're talking about. Allergy and obsession. That's what the real alcoholic is. One who has the allergy, has the obsession. This chapter refers to the real alcoholic. And to quote Bill from page 21, what about the real alcoholic? So let's hold our place here for just a second and turn to page 21 just to see what he's thinking when he says the real alcoholic. We're on page 21, paragraph 1. The paragraph begins with that question. What about the real alcoholic? He may start off as a moderate drinker. He may or may not become a continuous hard drinker. And here it is. But at some stage of his drinking career, and it is a 24/7 job, pays horribly, lousy benefits, he begins to lose all control, which we've underlined, of his liquor consumption once he starts to drink. The physical allergy. He's got the allergy. Once he starts, he can't stop because he's triggered the allergy, the phenomenon of craving. All right, let's get back to 149. So This chapter refers to the real alcoholic, sick people, deranged men. What our friend, the vice president, had in mind was the habitual or whoopee drinker. In other words, the hard drinker, the moderate drinker. As to them, his policy is undoubtedly sound, but he did not distinguish between such people and the real alcoholic. Now, I'm going to take a break here a second because there was a section of this chapter that was removed right here. There was a part that Bill put in, and if you have your handouts from last week, it's called To Employers, the deleted section. Andy's going to put it up. And this is the section that was deleted. And for what it's worth, Bill knew, and we've talked about this before, of Hank's tendency to write in this wandering, meandering fashion, very often getting off topic regularly, leaving out important connecting thoughts. And given Hank's overall lack of organization, Bill thought it was a great idea to insert a 10-point summary right here to kind of summarize the chapter, to bring clarity to an often rambling creation. Hank, on the other hand, felt it was redundant and unnecessary, and he deleted it, probably behind Bill's back at the last minute when he was at the printer putting the final touches on it. He eliminated this section because Bill wanted it in there. Hank took it out at the last minute without getting the okay from Bill. And this is what Bill wrote. Starting at the top, he said, of course, this chapter refers to alcoholics, sick people, deranged men. What our friend, the vice president, had in mind was the habitual or whoopee drinker. As to them, his policy is probably sound, but as you see, he does not distinguish between such people and the alcoholic. Being a businessman, you might like to have a summary of this chapter. Here it is. And he's appealing to a businessman in a business-like fashion, right? What businessman wouldn't like to have outlines and details and footnotes and all of that mishigas? Well, this is Bill's way of saying, here it is for you on a silver platter. And Hank thought it was repetitive and took it out. 1, acquaint yourself with the nature of alcoholism, right? He suggests reading the book. 2, be prepared to discount and forget your man's past. 3, confidentially offer a medical treatment and cooperation, provided you think he wants to stop. 4, have the alcohol thoroughly removed from his system and give him a suitable chance to recover physically. Get him into a detox. Get him into treatment afterwards. That's what we're talking about. Get the alcohol out of his system. 5, have the doctor in attendance present him with this book, but don't cram it down his throat. 6, have a frank talk with him when he gets back from his treatment, assuring him of your full support, encouraging him to say anything he wishes about himself, making it clear the past will not be held against him. 7, ask him to place recovery from alcoholism ahead of all else. 8, don't let him overwork. 9, protect him when justified from malicious gossip. And 10, if after you've shot the works, he will not stop, then let him go. Then let him go. And the next paragraph is exactly as it was in the book. So let's get back to the book. And incidentally, if you have the study version of the big book that has the blank pages every other page, I don't know if you were aware of it, but at the back of the book, there are gray pages that contain the original manuscript. That section is in it. So if you have the study version, you have that section. It's at the back of the book in the gray pages of To Employers. It's not to be expected that an alcoholic employee will receive a disproportionate amount of time and attention. He should not be made a favorite. Let's highlight that. He shouldn't be made a favorite. That's enabling. That's just going to enable him. The right kind of man the kind who recovers. And I'm going to suggest we highlight who recovers in orange because that's the reference point we use for how many times in this book Bill makes reference to permanent recovery, permanent sobriety, or just plain recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body. For those people who say we don't use that terminology in AA, well, the book uses it a lot. So we've highlighted it in orange so that anytime you want to find all of those reference points, all you got to do is thumb through the book and show it to the genius at the meeting who says there's no such thing as recover. The kind who recovers will not want this sort of thing. He will not impose. Far from it. He'll work like the devil and thank you to his dying day. Today, I own a little company. That company that Hank is talking about is called Honors Dealers. Honors Dealers, it's an auto polish, an auto chemical dealership. It was based at the time in Newark, New Jersey. So Honors Dealers, an auto polish dealership, Newark, New Jersey. Today I own a little company. There are two alcoholic employees. Those two are Jim Burwell, whose story, The Vicious Cycle, was in the first edition, was removed because he relapsed. If you'd like to read that story, it's in the book Experience, Strength, and Hope, which is a compilation of all of the stories that were ever removed from the book. And again, his story is The Vicious Cycle. Jim Burwell, Burwell, who is sometimes given credit for coming up with the term God as you understand him, as we understand him. And the second one is Bill W. Simple. I've got a couple of places that I've seen that suggestion made, so I'm going to go along with that. It seems to make sense because he didn't have a lot of employees. He had a small office. He had a salesman, Jim Burwell. Bill was designated as a salesman, but he didn't do much. He was there writing the book. That's what he was doing in the office every day. Who produced as much as 5 normal salesmen. But why not? They have a new attitude and they've been saved from a living death. Yeah, they have a new attitude. Remember what it said back in the 5th and 6th step? They have a new attitude. They have a new relationship with their creator. They've been saved from this living death. He says they have a new attitude and have been saved from a living death. Absolutely. They have a new attitude, a new relationship with their creator, and they've been saved. I've enjoyed every moment spent in getting them straightened out. The real joy, the joy, I'm sorry, the joy that one feels is real. And the payoff for the individual as well as the company is redemption. So when he says, I've enjoyed every minute spent in getting them straightened out, I, I don't know if he's taking credit or not, but the point is the joy is real and the payoff is a redemptive individual. Okay, now what we're going to do is something a little bit different. We're going to do what I call what consider a flyover. We've already established that the 12th step is 3 parts. A promise, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, that's the greatest promise we offer the newcomer. But nothing in this life is free. So we're being charged with in the second part of this 12th step, we're being charged when it says we tried to carry this message to other alcoholics. There's a tab, there's a bill to be paid. So we have the first part is the promise, the second part is the charge. The promise is delineated, the instructions for that are in the doctor's opinion and the first 6 chapters. Then we have the charge, carry the message to other alcoholics. The instructions for that are in chapter 7, working with others, and as we've just seen to a great extent, into employers. But what about the last part? The third part of the 12th step is the greatest challenge of all, to practice these principles, these steps in all of our affairs. Now, Chapter 7, which is called Working with Others, Bill makes reference in the earlier chapter that the next chapter is entirely about step 12. And as we mentioned at the time, it's not entirely accurate. It is all about step 12, but it's not about all of step 12. It's about the second part of step 12. So where are the clear-cut directions for the other part? So if the promise is carried out, as I said, by the doctor's opinion and the first 6 chapters, where do we find the directions for the challenge? Now, if we look at the fact that the book is written in a particular sequence that guides us from one step to the other, which, as he said back on page 25, which the process requires for its successful consummation. And the successful consummation is the spiritual awakening. Successful consummation is the same thing as having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. So that's the spiritual awakening. So if that's the case, then this last part, practicing these principles, has to be somewhere after chapter 6, after chapter 7, rather, working with others. But those chapters are entitled and directed to the wives, to the family, to employers. So how can it be contained in those chapters? That's the question that I set out to try and answer when I went through those chapters with a fine-tooth comb to try and extract where he might have put the directions for practicing these principles in all of our affairs. It had to be somewhere. Bill said this book is a design for living, and it just wouldn't be complete if we didn't finish that last part. He said early in the book that to show other alcoholics precisely how we've recovered is the main purpose of the book. So why would he leave out that part? Well, he wouldn't. It's got to be there. And lo and behold, Bill Wilson was true to form. These principles of success, and that's what I like to call them, are indeed very much covered in those chapters, wives, family afterwards. But it requires careful reading. The expression Bill used in the spiritual experience appendix about careful reading. We know alcoholics are very careful readers. We like to make sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, and we have all of the data so we can make educated decisions, because that's what we do well. We make good decisions. So you have to carefully read these chapters. And if we set out to read those chapters with a fine tooth comb, we're going to come upon these pearls of wisdom, as I like to call it. And we've got a list of them. It was sent out in your email. We're going to go through the chapters, kind of bouncing from page to page. If you find a principle of success that is not on the list, please let me know. Because the list that you have that went out in the email, I think it's now 5 or 6 pages long. When we first started this 10 plus years ago, it was 1 page long, but we've been going over it and adding to it each time. So where I started, as I said, was 2 wives. So if we take a minute, let's go to 2 wives on page 104, and let's start the search. I knew it had to be here. Okay. I read 104. I didn't see very much there in terms of principles of success. And I read 105, and I didn't see anything. And 106, and still didn't find anything that really felt like it was right. I got to 107 and 108, and I'm starting to lose the idea that maybe it's here. Maybe I'm on a wild goose chase. Maybe it's not here. That the principles of success might be buried somewhere else. Well, maybe he did forget it. So I continued reading. 108, not there. 109, not there. 110. And then I turned to page 111, and the very first sentence on the page not only answered my question, it used the terminology that I had in mind, the principles of success. So there's the first principle of success. How to practice these principles, these steps in all of our affairs. One, the first principle of success is you should never be angry. Now, I'm going to suggest you pick a color and highlight these things, but put a P next to them. You may want to number them because on the list, they're all numbered. But I would make it in red ink. I've got a P next to each one of these so that they stand out. So it's not just something I highlighted that stands out in the chapter, but it stands out as a principle of success. And incidentally, there's a shortcut. You don't have to go through all of these chapters. If you want to take the express train to success, right? If these are principles of success, you want to take the express, turn to page 112, top of the page, the first 3 words. There's your express to success. Read this book. Very simple, without going through all these other things, hopscotching from here to there. You want the best principle of success? Read the book. Okay, but let's get back to where we were on the previous page. And if you have the handout, Andy, you want to put it up so folks can see what we're talking about? That's what it looks like. And the first principle of success is you should never be angry. The key word in that sentence is the word be. We're going to get angry. We're human beings. We get angry, which is why we have a 10th step when these things crop up. So they're going to crop up. But being angry is a state of mind. I was angry every day of my active addiction. I was angry. I was restless. I was discontented. I was uncomfortable in my skin. I was hypersensitive, overly critical, sarcastic, brutally crude and mean. But I was always angry. So that's number one. Then continuing on the next paragraph, I'm sorry, the end of this paragraph is the next principle of success. Patience and good temper are most necessary. Now, incidentally, you may notice, Andy, if you scroll up a little bit, on the top of the page, does it have the principles? No, this copy doesn't have it. I apologize. So let's take a minute and do that. Above where it says principles of success, let's write down these words. Oh, there it is. These are the 7 principles, spiritual principles that I think we're taught to live by. And maybe we can get to line up each one of those with one of the things that are listed in the list below. So for example, we just said you should never be angry. Well, that would tie into, I think, patience, wouldn't it? Goodwill, tolerance. So here's the principles of success in a nutshell: tolerance, compassion, patience, forgiveness, humility, goodwill, love. Those are the spiritual principles I try and live by. I believe those are the spiritual principles that are at the core of every religion. I don't care what it is, Buddhism, Catholicism, Judaism, Hinduism, whatever. At its heart, I think and it's just an opinion, every religion has that at its very core: tolerance, compassion, patience, forgiveness, humility, goodwill, love. The Sermon on the Mount stuff. So the first principle of success is you should never be angry. Number 2, patience and good humor are most necessary. Well, it tells you patience. That's one of them.
Good temper.
Temper, right?
You say humor.
Yes, good temper. You should never tell him what he must do. You don't go around bossing people around. We practice tolerance. We practice patience, humility, right? Humility is recognition of one's shortcomings. I don't have the answers for everything for everybody. So I don't tell people what they must do because I don't have all the answers. Number 4, also on this same page in paragraph 3, it says, have a full and useful life, right in the middle of the paragraph. They need your companionship. With your help, it's possible to have a full and useful life. Remember, our job is to do God's bidding, to stay close to him and to do his bidding. Well, I think that's what that's telling me. Have a useful life. That's my purpose. Number 5, also in the same paragraph, 3 lines down, don't set your heart on recovery, on reforming. In other words, it's about your recovery. We're not there to convert everybody to the 12 steps. If they want it, then we will guide them through it. But we don't come into this with wanting to reform everybody who walks in the door. Number 6, in the next paragraph, 4 lines down, reasonableness and patience. Be reasonable. Be patient. Well, patience is what it says. It's patient. Compassion. I think all those spiritual principles are covered in being reasonable and patient. Number 7, about 4 lines down from reasonableness and patience. Be sure you're not critical. We don't criticize. Practice humility. Practice goodwill. So we're up to number 7 on that list. And number 8 is on the very next line. Put yourself in his place. Best advice when you're working with somebody, put yourself in their place. That's why we have to get certain questions answered in working with others. Bill tells us, find out all you can about him. Does he really want to quit? And then get an idea of his background and so on. Why? So we can put ourselves in his place. Okay, next one, the next line. Number 9 is be helpful rather than critical. We build up. We don't tear down. Build them up. We don't tear them down. What's the expression? The only time we look down on an alcoholic is when we lean over to pick them up. We don't look down. Okay, that's number 9. Next page, number 10, in the top paragraph, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines down. Show him you have confidence. Now, confidence to me also means faith. Belief is hope, but faith is knowledge. Faith is surety. Faith is confidence. So don't be afraid to show people that you have faith. Don't hide your light, right? What's the expression? Don't hide your light behind the bush. Don't be afraid to show your faith and talk about your faith. Number 11 is in the next paragraph. 1, 2, 3, 4 lines down. 2 words. Patient waiting. That's an extraordinary goal. Patient waiting. I'm not real good at that. And it's something I have to work at every day. To be patient and wait. Time takes time. Here's a great one. Number 12. It's on the next page. Page 113, paragraph 2. The paragraph that begins with, if you have a number 3 husband, go down 1, 2, 3, 4 lines. Share your enthusiasm. The word enthusiasm comes from the Greek word theos, which means God. And the en at the beginning of it means to be in sync with God. Namaste is another word that I think is very close to enthusiasm. The God in me connects with the God in you. And here's why sharing your enthusiasm is so vital. Because enthusiasts, they take commitments. Enthusiasts sponsor. Enthusiasts speak when they're asked to speak. And as a result, enthusiasts tend not to relapse. That's one of my sponsor's favorite expressions, that the people who have long-term sobriety and maintain it are the people who never lose their enthusiasm. Think about that. Never lose that enthusiasm. Okay, number 13, We're going to skip number 13 because there's way too many here, and I want to try and get as many done as I can today. Let's go to number 14 on page 113, paragraph 2. Urge action without arousing hostility. It's the paragraph that we just mentioned. If you have a number 3 husband, it's the last part of the paragraph, 3 lines up from the bottom. Urge action without arousing hostility. In other words, don't tell people what they must do, right? Practice humility. Number 15 is on the next page. The very first paragraph, it's a rather long one, but the last line, the last 6 words of it, the power of God goes deep. The power of God goes deep. It's infinite. Remember, we talked about that in the fear inventory. The reason why we had these fears is because of over-reliance on our finite self and lack of reliance on an infinite God. So the power of God goes deep. Remember, it's infinite. Page 15, 115, I'm sorry, the next page, first full paragraph, second to last line, be on guard not to embarrass or harm. In other words, that's telling me to practice prudent honesty, not brutal honesty. Brutal honesty is cruel, it's mean. Practice prudent honesty. Use discretion. This nonsense of, well, it's an honest program, so I really got to tell you what I think of you, is brutality. It's not the way we're supposed to, I don't think that's the way we're supposed to express our honesty. Use discretion. Practice prudence. Okay. Number 17 is on page, the same page. The next paragraph, 1, 2, 3, 4 lines down, 2 words, sympathetic understanding. In other words, patient waiting. Bill has a tendency of saying the same thing differently, but meaning the same thing. So patient waiting on page 112 is sympathetic understanding on page 115. Must be important because he's using it more than once. Let's see, let's go to number 18. Let's keep going in order for the time being. The next paragraph, I'm sorry, the end of the next paragraph ends with courage, good nature, and lack of self-consciousness will do wonders. Courage, good nature, lack of self-consciousness will do wonders. And here's one that's a real challenge. This one is well, let's go over it first. 3 lines down in the next paragraph. It's best not to take sides in any argument. And I think that's a 2-part piece, because if we go down to the next line is the second part of that thought. It says it's best not to take sides in any argument. And then on the next line, use your energies to promote a better understanding all around. Saint Francis of Assisi prayer, to understand rather than be understood. I think that's what he's trying to tell us. Don't take sides in an argument. Try and understand both sides and use your energies to promote a better understanding. Try and be the neutral party. Let's see. Number 20 is on page 116, the next page. 3 lines down from the top. Be careful not to be resentful. Not don't get resentful. We're going to get resentful. Remember the 10th step. We watch for that. We watch for resentfulness. And when these things crop up, so we're going to get that way. But just like the first suggestion, We should never be angry. We should never be resentful. That's a state of mind. I was resentful every waking hour when I was active. Let's see. Let's go down to number 24, which is on page 117. Page 117, paragraph 3, I'm sorry, the one that begins with some of the snags you will encounter. Let's go to the last line on the page. That's probably the better way to explain it. We're on page 117, the last two lines. Be careful not to disagree in a resentful or critical spirit. When one is arguing in a resentful manner, we're arguing with the past. How productive can that be? We can't, if we're arguing about a problem that just occurred, some screw up I just did, it doesn't help to go back a month, a year, a decade. It's not very productive. That's arguing with the past. So we don't argue in a resentful manner, and we don't argue in a critical manner. Try and be helpful. Here's a great one. Let's go to 26 on the top of the next page. This is one of my favorites and one that we've used quite a few times, I think. Number 26 on your page. Next time you have a heated discussion, no matter what the subject, it should be the privilege of either to smile and say, and here's the advice. This is getting serious. I'm sorry I got disturbed. Let's talk about it later. In other words, let's try a reset. It works. Do you think so?
Yeah, I did Oz the yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah, we did it as recently as yesterday. That's right. It works. Believe me, it works. Just wonderful advice. He's not telling us that we're not going to argue. We're going to have differences. But when it gets really heated, be careful not to disagree in a resentful, critical manner. And if it gets really heated, you know what? Let's put the brakes on. I'm sorry I got disturbed. Can we come back to it later? Let's do a reset. Okay?
But first of all, you have to calm down.
You have to calm down. Yeah, and that helps put the brakes on, though.
Yeah.
Really does. Because you get momentum going and you're building up a froth and stop. Stop. Number 28 on page 118, the next paragraph, 4 lines down. Patience, tolerance, understanding, and love are the watchwords. Patience, tolerance, understanding, and love are the watchwords. And if you want, you could add the rest of the words from page 1, which are compassion, forgiveness, humility, goodwill. Those are the 7 words on the top of the first page. So why can't they all be watchwords? Page 29, I'm sorry, number 29, also the same paragraph, 2 lines down. Live and let live is the rule. It's one of the 4 rules in this book, and I'm not going to take the time to go through them all right now, but the point is, live and let live. Don't try and run the world, try and run everybody's life. And if you continue with that thought on the same line, show a willingness to remedy your own defects. Practice humility. Go through your own 10th step. Don't try and drag somebody else through a 10th step for them. Mind your own business. Rectify your own defects. Number 31, here's kind of the opposite of don't be angry and don't be resentful. Be patient. That's great advice. 24/7 advice. Being patient should be a state of mind. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Be patient. When resentful thoughts come, page 119, top paragraph, 4 lines down. When these resentful thoughts come, because they are going to come, 10th step lets us know that, try to pause and count your blessings. Pause. One of the most overlooked important words in the book, I think. Probably one of the toughest things to do also, as Kathy mentioned before, when you get that head of steam going, to just put the brakes on and pause, it takes effort, but it works. So when these thoughts come, count your blessings and pause. Pause, ask, discuss, remind, turn. Remember our directions for the 10th step. Pause when selfish, dishonest, resentment, fearful. When these crop up, we ask God to remove them. So we watch, we ask, we discuss them with someone, we make amends if need be, and we turn our thoughts to someone we could help. WADAT, WADAT. Back on step 10. Okay. Where am I here? Be patient. Okay, number 33. 3 lines up from the bottom of this page. Cooperate rather than complain. Cooperate rather than complain. Number 34 is at the top of the next page. Incidentally, oh yeah, that's right. The next page. A sense of responsibility for others. We do have a sense of responsibility for others. So he's just telling us to be aware of that. We have a responsibility to help others. That's our job. Let's see. Here's number 35 is on page 120, first paragraph. Oh yeah, second line. Think of what you can put into life instead of how much you can take out. I've been a taker most of my life. We're now learning to give, to think of someone else other than myself. Next, 36 is on the same page. In the middle of that next paragraph, the one that begins with perhaps your husband will make a fair start, about 3 or 4 lines from the bottom of the paragraph, it says, you need not remind him, 3 lines up, you need not remind him of his spiritual deficiencies. That's why we relapse. It's because of spiritual deficiencies. But it's not our job to remind the people of that. We should focus on our own. And cheer him up and ask how you can be more helpful. Right after that, still how you can be still more helpful. Be, not get, but be still more helpful. And here's a great one. On the bottom of this page is number 39. Place the problem along with everything else in God's hands. Everything else. You may want to make a note next to that. See page 69.3. So keep your place on page 120. And if we go to page 69, paragraph 3, the last part of that paragraph. In meditation, we ask God what we should do about each specific matter. The right answer will come if we want it. Saying the same thing. Place the problem along with everything else in God's hands. Saying the same thing on page 120 as he said on page 69. Okay, let's get back. We're going to go to page 122 because we're in the family afterwards now. Page 122, paragraph 1, the first paragraph, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines down. Meet on the common ground of tolerance, understanding, and love. Spiritual principles. Practice those spiritual principles. And the next sentence is the next part of that. This involves a process of deflation, and above deflation, I'm going to suggest you put the word humility, because that's what deflation is to me. It's humility. Deflation is reduction of ego. Humility, recognition of one's defects, one's shortcomings, the opposite of ego. Number 43 is on page 124. And again, I'm jumping because I'd like to try and wrap this chapter up, this section up today. Page 124, paragraph 1, 1, 2, 3, 4 lines down. The paragraph begins with the words Henry Ford. We grow by our willingness to face and rectify errors and convert them into defects. Whoa. Sounds like either step 10 or steps 4, 5, 6, and 7. We grow by our willingness to face and rectify errors and convert them to assets. Now, here's another multiple part one. The first part of this next one is on the next, on this page, in the next paragraph. It says, the first line, the painful past may be of infinite value to others, right? Our greatest source of embarrassment and humiliation becomes our greatest asset. That painful past makes us of infinite value to others. So here's part 2. Go down a few lines. Be willing to bring former mistakes, no matter how grievous, out of their hiding places. Our painful past is of infinite value, so bring those things out. And then here's a word of caution. The next one, it's on page 125, the next page, paragraph 0, the last 3 lines on the top paragraph. It's a word of caution. Unless some good and useful purpose is to be served, past occurrences should not be discussed. We've already paid those bills, and we're not going to get into a competition for who was the baddest when we were out there. I'm going to use my painful past if it will be of value to others. I don't use it to one up the next guy. Make sense? Okay. And the next one is going back to page 124, paragraph 2. 1, 2, 3, 4 lines from the bottom of the paragraph. Cling to the thought that in God's hands, the dark past is the greatest possession you have, the key to life and happiness for others. With it, you can avert death and misery for them. For them. So it goes back to the first part of this. Our painful past is of infinite value to others, because with it, we can avert death and misery for other people. A, B, C, D. Here's some great stuff. On page 125, the next page, first paragraph, the first full paragraph begins with "We families of Alcoholics Anonymous." Let's go to the end of that paragraph, 3 lines up from the bottom. We do talk about each other a great deal, but we almost invariably temper such talk by a spirit of love and tolerance. We talk about each other a great deal, not gossip, not gossip. We temper such talk with a spirit of love and tolerance. Love and tolerance doesn't come out in gossip. Cruelty comes out in gossip. Feelings of superiority come out in gossip. I'm better than that guy, so I can tear him apart. That's what comes out in gossip. So we don't gossip, but we talk about each other in terms of love and tolerance. And you may even want to add respect, but I think it's covered under love and tolerance. And continuing in line with that thinking is number 46. The next paragraph, we do not relate intimate experiences of another person unless we are sure he would approve. Give you a great example of that. I used to go to my home group with this one guy, and for a period of time, we were arriving like there was a time there where I would drive him or he would drive me. So we were arriving at the same time. And one Sunday, he wasn't with me. Nobody said anything. Second Sunday, he wasn't with me. People started to ask, where's he at? What's going on? Is everything all right? Now, what they didn't know was the previous week before that last meeting, I'd spent the weekend all through the Saturday night into Sunday trying to get him into detox and treatment because he relapsed. And we finally got him placed. But I didn't know what he wanted me to say to people because it's not my story. I tell my story. I don't relate the intimate experiences of another person. So the next week, when there was visiting at the treatment center, I went and visited him and I asked them, what do you want me to tell these people? They love you and they want to know. So he said, you're telling the truth. They need to know that people relapse, but they can get treatment and get back on track. So please tell them the truth. And that's exactly what I did. But I got permission to tell an intimate detail of his story. And sometimes we don't think about that. Someone goes into treatment, someone asks about him, and we just, oh, he's in treatment. He relapsed. I don't think that's the right way to go about it. I'd rather get permission to do that. I'd rather, if it happened to me, I'd rather you'd ask me about it rather than spreading what amounts to gossip. Okay, stick to your own stories. That's same paragraph right after it. Stick to your own stories. How often do we hear people lifting other people's stories into their own? Oh, that sounds like a good story. It's better than mine. So I'm going to adopt that. I'm going to put that in my story because it sounds funnier or it sounds badder or it sounds deeper. Tell your own story. That's the best way to do it. Don't try and take other people's stories. Here's number 48 on page 127. We're going to jump to 127. First paragraph, 3 lines down.
Ethan.
Be thankful. Not get thankful. Be. It's a state of mind. We should be grateful 24/7. Be thankful. Let's go down a little bit. Next paragraph. Last line in the paragraph, and we're jumping to number 51. Material well-being always followed spiritual progress. It never preceded it. Right? Always, always followed spiritual progress, never before. Number 52, show unselfishness and love. The next paragraph, 3 lines down, show unselfishness and love. Not just the hour and a quarter that we're sitting together in a room at a meeting. It's very easy. I love you and you love me, and we try our best not to hurt one another when we're together. But what about out there? What about when we go out into the real world? What about when you're behind the wheel and some guy cuts you off? What about when my favorite, when I'm in the express line at the grocery store, which is 12 items or less, and I've got 4 items in my cart, and the guy in front of me has about 104 items. How's my program working now, Howard? That's what that means to me.
Usually go to the self-checkout.
Yeah, I go to self-checkout. That's a good one. I like that. Okay, where am I here? Be thankful.
And the home.
What number were we up to? Lost my place.
Um,
Um,
52.
52. Oh, show unselfishness and love. Yeah, show unselfishness and love, not just the 1.5 hours or so we're at a meeting. Thank you, Andy. Let's jump, we're running out of time, so let's jump a little further down. Number 57, page 131. We're going to page 131, paragraph 2. Again, more instructions about how to disagree with someone. Yield here and there. And next to it, I've written, learn how to compromise. You know, I've heard compromise is two people agreeing to do something that neither one wants to do.
Yeah,
But yield here or there, right? And going along with that is the next one on that same line. Play an effective part in the new life. Be effective, compromising here or there, yielding here or there. Also on that line, activity should be balanced. Activity should be balanced. If you're going to 3 or 4 Zoom meetings a night and you're not getting your 4th step work done or your amends work done or whatever step you're working on, that's not balance. If you're going to live meetings and you're out all night, just like you were when you were drinking, and you've got a family back home who never sees you, it's not balanced. So try and balance things in your life. Let's go to number 63 on page 132. Number 1. We absolutely, right in the middle of the page, we absolutely insist on enjoying life. For what it's worth, and again, I enjoy this kind of stuff, so I'll pass it along. In the margin on one side or the other of we absolutely insist on enjoying life, I've written 16, 16, 3, and 3. Now, what does that mean? 16 lines from the top, 16 lines from the bottom, 3 words from the left, 3 words from the right. You'll find that's expression. We absolutely insist on enjoying life. It's not a bad idea to keep it the center of your life. Enjoy your life. 16 up, 16 down, 3 over from the left and 3 over from the right. 16, 16, 3, and 3. We absolutely insist on enjoying life. I love that kind of shit. It's just so cool. Okay. Let's go to the next page on your list, the last page, number 68, which is on page 133. So let's go to page 133. Second line, be happy, joyous, and free. Now,
God wants us to be happy, joyous, and
yes,
free.
God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. We should add that into it. I think that happy, joyous, and free is a process. And by that, I mean, you know, when we come in here and we first experience life without those chemicals, and we see that we can live because we see people doing the same thing, we get a little happy. I did. I was happy to know that there was another way. And then I began to incorporate that way into my life. And it created some joy, because joy is a spiritual term. Joy is a happiness that comes from within. It's not based on outside factors. Joy is a spiritual term to me. So I come in and I get happy just knowing there's another way. I start to practice that way and I experience joy. And I keep working that way and I get free of the bondage of self. Happy, joyous, free. That's just the way I look at it, but I think it's a process. Get happy, get joyous, get free. Let's go to the next one as well. On page, the same paragraph, 4 lines up from the bottom of that paragraph. Avoid then the deliberate manufacture of misery. That means avoid drama. Avoid drama. Avoid self-seeking. Number 70 on the same page. Paragraph 2 begins with, but this does not mean. If you go 3 lines up from the bottom of that paragraph, we should never belittle. Never belittle. And here's another, and we're going to wrap it up with this last one on page 135. Yeah, we're right on time. 135, the last 3 lines, the italicized section. These are what I call the 3 P's. First things first, priorities. Priorities. Keep your priorities in sight. Live and let live. Patience. Remember, patience and tolerance of others is our code. Live and let live. Practice patience. Easy does it. The P there?
Persistence.
Persistence. Persistence in practicing spiritual principles. Why? Because time, recovery takes time. Sometimes, often, because we slap that expression up on the wall, like I have it in front of me here, or you see it up on the walls in meetings rooms, that expression, easy does it. People use that as a weapon to justify, don't rush into the steps. It's not a race. Take it easy. You don't have to do an inventory right away. You don't have to get away from those people because it is a race. That window of opportunity, when the obsession to use is going to come back, we don't know when. It could be a month, it could be a year, not likely, more likely a matter of days or weeks, if not hours. So get busy, stay busy, and get other people busy. But easy does it. Remember, it's directions for us. It's giving us direction. Recovery takes time, persistence. So there are the 3 P's: priorities, patience, and persistence.
They used to say, easy does it, but do it.
That's it. Easy does it, but do it. Keep going. All right, I'm going to stop the recording and we'll continue next week with the rest of the chapters. We're going to get into family afterwards.